Smog890 and
Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. How you doing today? We have with us our favorite co-hosts, Carneros. How you doing?
Hello, everyone. Good to see you.
And Elise.
Hey, how's it going?
Really good. Glad to see you guys. Well, one of you, right? Elise is off screen this time again. We are going to talk about trade hubs today in some depth. We have a couple of guests with us we'll introduce in just a second. Trade hubs are the actually more like the beating hearts around New Eden. They're the ones that keep everything supplied. The lifeblood of society is ships and equipment, and all that comes from trade hubs. So we're going to go a little deeper into that than usual. But first, I want to just check around the room. How you doing, Carneros? How's everything going?
Good. I'm excited about today's topic because as you look around at the health of New Eden, one of the things you want to check are how trade hubs are doing, and you know they're an important sign of activity and life, and an important subject. Plus, who doesn't like to have everything they want in one spot to just run and buy it? It's like Amazon. Love it.
Yeah. That's what logistics are for. And Elise, you're doing good?
Yeah, very good. Healthy again. I'm no longer dying, which is good news for everyone. I've been trying to do a little bit of market PvP myself, but I've been failing. So I'm glad to hear from the pros to see what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah, well, actually, let's introduce them, and we can all talk about markets here. First, I'd like to introduce from Star Frontiers. He is something of a role player. We'll ask him about that. His name is Avio Yanken.
Yeah, that's me, but I'm not. I want to consider myself a pro. I've never done anything like that.
Right. Well, actually, say your name again so that people get it really clear.
Avio Yanken.
Avio Yanken. Oh, okay. A little less romantic than Yanken, but okay. Nice to meet you. Let's also introduce with us today is Eden Trade.
Hello.
How you doing?
It's actually New Eden Trade and Market, but we shorten it to Eden Trade for chatting.
Well, my character's name's Eden Trade, and then my corporation's New Eden Trade and Market.
Gotcha.
Well, I guess that's like naming your son, right? Or son E. All right. It was nice to meet you, Eden Trade. Let's talk about markets. I actually wanted to start with something that's very fundamental for people who are listening to this that are kind of interested in Eve, don't know it that well. A little bit of background on markets, what the major trade hubs are, what kind of stuff people actually get. That kind of thing. Anyone want to take that? Anyone at all? If not, I'll do it.
Just the light version on markets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, frequently people need a bunch of things at once, not just one thing at a time. And there, a long time ago, we shouldn't go into the deep history, but a long time ago there was. I can't even remember what the name of the system was.
You lie.
There.
Not that you lie.
You lie. Yes. Yeah.
Not that you lie, but you lie.
Was the big trade hub for years in New Eden, and people would go there to sell their stuff because they'd get a better price and it would sell faster. And people would go there to buy stuff because it was more likely to be available at a reasonable price on the market. One day. Elise is better at this than I am, but one day they rerouted stuff, didn't they? Isn't that why Jita got picked by the players?
Actually, no, Jita got picked by the players because it was a mission hub system. Like there was a lot of H's in that system at one point, but they took them out. Uli had like super highway gates to the other regions of like Empire space. That's why it became a trade hub, as far as I know.
Yeah, and then CCP decided to switch it up, but they changed the. I don't know if you haven't played Eve for a long time. I don't know if you can imagine this, but CCP was just like, you know what, we're just going to change where gates go. so they did that. They changed where gates went. So Uli was no longer in the center of everything. So Capsuleers were like, what do we do now? Like Uli is no longer the best. So they came up with a bunch of other ones, which are currently like existing today. Jita obviously being the big winner.
Mar being second, the Dixie, Ren.
Talk about chaos era, right? Like that's some major chaos right there. Can you imagine like how painful that was for certain people who had their logistics down and understood what they were doing, and just how traumatic a change like that would be?
Well,
but yeah, one second, Carneros, you were right, and Elise was right. I think there were multiple reasons that Jita became the actual trade hub. There wasn't any necessarily one reason, but a lot of things added up. Like why Jita? It had really good, I believe, proximity to the empires. It's relatively close to many gates. Many different regions, so you could get to it. And it also had, I think, a really nice progression of agents, and also a lot of high-level agents. So yes, definitely, what Avio said, the agents was a big deal. And why are agents important to markets? Well, a lot of people who are using the market to supply themselves for missions or to sell the stuff that they have, the wreckage and all that kind of stuff after they destroy a mission, go through a mission. It's a good place. It's a good place to sell it local, so you can get right back out there and do the next mission. So that's basically why we have Jita becoming kind of a center point. And then over time, it compacts on itself, and you have people just agreeing that that's the place to go. And more people start to do that. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like Jita has become a skyscraper on a landscape compared to what it was, say, 10 years ago when there was multiple trade hubs, as Avio was saying, like Do-Dixie or Amar. Seems like Jita is now more of a beacon than ever. Am I wrong?
It's always been that way. I mean, like, these are still trade hubs you're talking about. They still exist. They're just in their different corners of space. The Mimitar have their trade hub. The Galente have their trade hub. The Amar have their trade hub. It's in their capitals. So it's not like Jita is the pure one only trade hub. There's other trade hubs. It's just, yes, Jita has all the goods. It has all the stock. It has all the activity.
I think ultimately, if you wanted to buy something in EVE Online and you were like, okay, I can only go to one place, what would that place be? That place is going to be Jita 10 times out of 10.
If Jita doesn't have it, it doesn't exist.
Or the market's being manipulated at the moment.
That too.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, Carneros. So that if sometimes Jita doesn't have something, it's been all bought out. It may exist in Amar, which you can get to in 9 jumps, and you can run it down, grab it, bring it back to Jita, and sell it at a premium. But usually Jita will have everything. Eden Trey, do you have any thoughts on just the quick history on markets in Empire Space?
Yeah, I just wanted to go off what you just said really quick, though. I bought an item in Jita. A month later, I noticed the same guy came from Jita and bought it back for me and brought it back to Jita to put it back on the market of who I bought. So they were probably out of stock in Jita and brought it back from Stackmon.
So what's the problem with having such a prominent single trade hub? What are some of the problems of that?
Some of the problems are just really just keeping it in stock, making sure you're not buying too much, and that's mainly my single biggest problem is just keeping it in stock and figuring out how much to actually buy for it and not overspending on stuff.
Let's back up for a second, though.
Yeah.
When he's talking about stocking things, we need to give him a little bit more context. Our 2 esteemed guests here today set up remote trade hubs in areas away from the big guys of Jita, Amar, Do-Dixie, and Renz. So these guys, their gameplay in EVE, their thing that they do is they set up remote trade hubs. And we're going to ask them about that. So that was the first question about, how do you know how much to to stock of something? And it's a tricky question.
That's great context. What I was getting at, though, is why are they doing this in the first place? Why wouldn't they just let Jita be the market for the entire game? Like, what's the impetus to go and to start trade hubs in other areas in the first place?
Well, the short answer is, do you really want to do 20, 30 jumps to get the Jita to buy that one item?
So convenience.
Yeah, convenience. It's like when I was in Placid running my level 5 missions, I want to fit up a ship, and then you find yourself having to go the whole way to Jita to get that one item to bring it the whole way back. The next thing you know, you lose a whole hour of your game time, which that just to me is frustrating. Since I played Eve since 2005, and it's always the same thing. It's every time I would always want to, let's just go to Jita, buy what I need, and come back, because it's either going to be overpriced in one of the regions that I'm in, or it's just not going to be there at all.
So out of maybe a personal frustration, you decided this would be a neat option, because other people must be frustrated too.
Absolutely. I got like absolutely frustrated. And plus there's a huge need. I mean, you look at each region, like even when I'm selling a T1 item, people mark it up to like 300, 400,000 S for that one T1 item that costs maybe 20, 30,000 S.
Yeah. What about you, Avio?
Like what motivated me to do my thing?
Yeah.
I mean, I just like role playing. I wanted to boost the Garistas as a faction. I wanted to give it more attention, I want to give it content. I want people to go to Venal, like do Garistas missions, and just, I don't know, I just wanted to make a more prevalent faction. I just wanted, I didn't really do this for money.
No. So you did it for role-playing reasons. You wanted to support.
Yeah. There's a entire like backstory and like context behind like the actions taking place. There's like fiction I wrote. There's content behind this. Like I'm a creative person. I don't really. That's what motivates me.
You're not in it for the money.
No.
Okay.
It's just digital pixel money. Like it doesn't really matter in the end, does it?
Depends on. Everything doesn't matter unless you.
I mean, Plex for good it matters. Like, hey, I want to put this disc, put it in Plex, and give it a CCP.
I mean, shells don't matter unless a tribe decides that shells is money, and then all of a sudden it matters. It's all in faith, basically. It's all faith based. Even our economy is like faith based. But you're not doing it for reasons of becoming more wealthy yourself, is what you're saying.
Hell no, I'm pumping money into this blindly.
You're losing money on this.
Potentially, I know. I make money by doing missions, like selling LP. I make chunks of money doing that. And I do make sales and get returns on my investments. I'm not keeping track of the money. I got money. That's all that matters. I got money to keep it alive.
I love this, man. You sound like the real thing. Let's actually figure out what you guys are doing, because it is very interesting stuff. And we'll start with Avio. Why don't you tell us what you're up to and where it is located?
6NJ8V, the Garistas capital system in V. That's where I'm based out of, and most of my goods are built by me locally. Support your local builders, friends, please do.
So you're in Venal, which is, for those that don't know, that
no
is
scary space.
Outlaw space, right? It's NPC owned, so it can't be taken over. So your market has a little more security in that way. You can't be thrown out of the area, and you're working in an NPC structure that anybody can dock into. So it's basically an open port in deep space.
Yeah, well, you have this map up. Oh, you had the map I was saying go on stream, but can I point something out? Because 6NJ is actually a very nice location, because to get to the other side of Venal, there's like a pipeway you have to go through, and 6NJ is like a pit stop on one of these mandatory systems you have to pass.
A way station.
It's something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
There's not really any mission agents out here. Like there's like 2 stations in the region that have like 4 level 4 mission agents, but for 6NJ, it's just like 1 to 3, and we have 1 level 4 agent in YTech 4. YTech 4 you can only access through 6NJ, and YTech 4 has like the only NPC station where you can do research and like copying and all that.
Cool. Eden Trade, where are your hubs located?
My main hub with like 2,100 items is in Stackmon. That's my biggest trade hub, which hopefully I want to get all my other markets like that. The second one is Merolez. I can't say it, but it's in Verge Vendor, which is the next region over. And then Hatakan. I hate Eve system names. Hatakani. it's the Citadel, just right below Udema, where you go through that squeeze and everybody gets ganked.
So you're in Placid, that's where Stackman is, and then you're in Verge Vendor, both neighboring systems in Galente space, and then you're in Citadel region. Okay. So I can see a pattern here that you have the Forge, which is where Jita is. Then you have Citadel. Well, then you have Essence, so you missed Essence, and then you have Verge Vendor, and then you have Placid. So it seems like you're doing a line out to deep space. Yeah,
well, I started in Stackmon, and then my trade route, obviously, because I buy all my stuff in Jita, goes through all those systems. So just to kind of keep it for right now with my whole trade route and where my ships pass through, so I can drop off items and all that.
So what's your motivation?
My motivation is really just creating markets all over Eve, just so people don't have to go to Jita and they can just keep playing easily. And then I found another one. It's with my Verge Vendor. All the new Galente characters start over there, and I see them kind of clustering around my station where I'm selling stuff and buying all the mining equipment. So I think it actually helps a little bit with keeping new players happy and able to buy what they need instead of trying to figure out like, well, where do I go to buy this one item that I need?
That's a really interesting thing that I actually never considered at all. If you start the game as a new player, like you're starting in one of like a handful of systems, more or less. You don't know to go to Jita to go buy your stuff. So you're basically at the whim.
No, yeah, and that's what I thought. And when I thought about that, it was like when I first started playing Eve in 2005, I was like, I want to fit my brew ticks, but how do I fit it? Where do I go? And 3 hours later, going all over, I finally got it fit. And then I was like, well, I'm going to go.
And the area that you guys, at least where Stackmon in, which is like your biggest hub. That area is actually, I used to live in that area, and it's super annoying to get anything, especially if you run stuff through Placid. Like there's a lot of low sec pipes through Placid, a lot of missions, as you mentioned, a lot of level 5s. And I remember just absolutely having to go to Dodixie, which was a terrible trade hub at the time, just to get anything, and it was still a stretch.
Yeah,
so that's actually really neat that you decided to make Stackmon a hub. Do you use your own Fortizar, or do you use like the Fed Navy station?
Well, I use my own Fortizar. That's probably the only one I'll put up for right now because it's just a lot of work for that.
Well, Stackman was a pretty good hub. It's always very consistent. I think it's in the top 20 hubs, maybe even the top 10 hubs, and it has been for years and years. It's kind of underrated. It has this geography that's kind of unique, where you can reach it through Empire space, so you can actually gate to it in a freighter, which allows you to carry a lot of equipment, but it's right on the border of low sec, which is a faction war area, which means there'll be a lot of supplies for PvPers, and then it has really quick access to Syndicate, which gives you outlaw space or deeper space or nullsec really easily as well. So Stackman is a really, really good first choice.
I actually use Stackmon for basing to do combat sites up to Vistu. I used to base out of that system for a while.
And you had intergalactic space hobos on just the other day. They're based in Placid, and they're some of my best customers.
The hobos?
Yeah.
Do they come in and pay with like their coins?
They count out pennies.
They just bought a bunch of capital modules, so they probably lost a few caps just a bit ago.
These some rich hobos.
Nice.
Yeah, so they were we're referring to them because they were just on the last Talking in Stations show. So listen to that one as well. Elise, you used to live in Eufalant?
Yeah, I used to live in that area. I used to run like missions because I had like the best level 4 missions. Don't judge me, everyone. Back in the day, that was the best way to make money. So
it's still level 5s, I think, were lucrative not that long ago. It maybe has been superseded by a lot of the new material that CCP's put out with Triglavian stuff, but level 5 missions was respectable, and there are some there. Also, that area of Stockman is very dangerous because people camp those gates a lot, and there just seems to be, I think, Brave Newbies was between Stackman and Nullsec. That's where they started to grow in size. It's basically a place of a lot of activity. And a lot of players that have been around a while have been through there at one time or another.
Yeah, it's just this like quiet area of space. I don't want to say backwater, but it kind of is backwatery if you want to do stuff that relies on very few amount of people in your social circle. You can kind of have success there. If you want to you can explore there without running into like 50-man fleets or anything like that.
Oh, one more thing, just before we get Carneros back in here. This isn't the first time that people have tried to upstart trade hubs. A low-sec trade hub was actually started in that area, a few jumps from Stackman, by CSM member, and I'm going to forget her name, but she was on about 5 years ago. Good writer.
Minxie?
Nope. Minxie's friends with her. I forgot her name. Okay, I'll think of it.
Good job, Errol.
All right.
I figured everybody would know her, but except I can't think of the name.
All right, you work on that while I talk to him for a second. You mentioned the hobos buying large cap parts. How much do you guys watch your wallet to see the transactions happening and see if people are buying your stuff? Or do you just like let it go for a while and then come back, oh, I have more money?
I kind of, whenever I log on, I usually have 500 to 700 individual transactions that I've done over the past 24 hours. But before CCP updated the wallet, there's now like a 5-minute delay, so you can't click the load button. So I don't watch it as much as I used to, because I'd sit there and constantly click load to see everything that everybody was buying. But it is fun to sit there and watch and see what people are fitting up and how much they're buying and what they're fitting on their ships and what they're flying and all that stuff.
How much is seeing those transactions your main source of satisfaction for this kind of gameplay? Or are you getting more satisfaction from other things like people telling you that you're helping them, or seeing fleets happen and I don't seeing traffic come into the system? Or where's your satisfaction?
My satisfaction is just having this whole market thing and everything stocked. Like the other day, somebody bought a Tornado from me and bought all the fittings for the Tornado, and they didn't have to go to Jita. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Avio Yanken, where does your satisfaction come from running your trade hub?
I mean, again, just the role play, getting people involved in the lore, getting people involved in the storyline. And also, yeah, I've seen some people buy stuff, and I've actually seen them fly around space. I know they didn't get it from high sec. I know they got it locally from me, because who else they would have bought?
Roger. Now, do you guys use any outside software to help you manage or track or do your purchasing? Are you using Microsoft Excel? What are you doing how do you
not a sponsor of the show?
Well, I use Eve Mogul, which is amazing for just telling me my profits. It's not 100% accurate, but it helps quite a lot just to tell me how much I've sold. I've done 800 billion in transactions since I've started last year and made 55 billion in profit.
Wow, it's big numbers.
Nice. 55 billion in profit. Okay. And then
is that good? I can't tell.
It's pretty good. I run my margins markup 30% from Jita, so I'm not trying to price gouge everybody that shops.
So that means that you are charging 30% more than the Jita price, which we consider the what would be equivalent to the manufactured suggested price or retail price.
Yes, unless like we get into like the 100-200 millionist for like an item, because then you got to think about it. You're going to be charging 60 to 90 million on top of like 300 million isk item, and nobody's going to want to pay like 390 million for something that costs 300 million. So I kind of cut that back a little bit on those items.
So what would you do with a 300 million ISK ship hull if you were going to sell it in Stackmont?
I'd try to probably just put it at like 30 to 40 million profit.
That's reasonable in my mind.
It's funny that
out there.
You get like a little crash course in human psychology and marketeering and stuff like that. So, you know, like, hey, they'll be willing to pay 30% more for modules, but not when that 30% looks like 90 million. I'm going to have to dial that back to keep people in. That's so funny to me.
Yeah, then modules that are like 10 to 20,000 ISK, I'll put them like at 49,000 or 79,000 ISK.
I think that's where the art is, isn't it? It's knowing that margin, like instead of just applying a across the board markup, it's knowing like maybe I want to take a loss on these ships because I will sell T2 modules more. And so you actually make the ships really cheap so people can get into the ship, but then they need all the stuff that goes with it. And that's the stuff you make money on, like loss leaders.
Yeah, that too. Like sometimes people put ships up for sale in my market, and then I'm going to take sometimes, you know, maybe make a 1 million profit off of it or take it as a loss, but I'm still selling all the modules that are going with it.
Mm-hmm. And you must get to know the region and say, like, you know what, they favor this kind of a ship and they favor these kinds of modules. So I can, if I just mark up my damage control module because they need it a lot for some reason in this area, to 50% markup, then I'll end up kind of going ahead. That must be where some of the gameplay is figuring that out and seeing that work or not work. But for Avio, you have different reasons, right? Because you're going to just take a bath on your market hub.
What do you mean? Like, yeah, I told you my reasons, just like immersion. Right.
Yeah, so that's not your motivation. So it's okay if you actually run into debt trying to finance this. You're in it for roleplay reasons. You want to help the Garistas, Fatal.
I also want to like bring new players to that region as well. Like, most of my market, my niche is T1 goods, like T1 ships and modules. So I bring a market for like low SP players to come and join, and like, because that's how you attract people out here, is by giving them a market to actually like sustain and not cater to just the high SP veteran who are jaded at this point.
So you're creating a little oasis that the desert animals can drink from, so they don't have
a watering hole. Sure.
Yeah. And you're doing T1, which is, you're not going to make a lot of money on T1 because anybody could build T1.
Unless you see venal prices, then you actually make some good.
Oh,
guess
really?
How much I could sell? Guess how much I sold like ventures at one point, like 2 mil a hole.
Why ventures? Why are people buying ventures?
Because we need a mine. We need to build stuff out here. I when I first started out there, I actually had to get a blueprint, bring it out there, melt down some mission loot, build the ventures, build the miner once, build the mining laser upgrades, build like some prop mods or whatever, and actually go out there, mine the stuff, bring it back, and actually build the rest of my goods. That's a little unoptimal at this point. I have a procure now.
Wow. I love that. I think that it's interesting. You guys have different motivations resulting in the same set of problem solving that needs to happen. And I think what's really interesting about Venal and Avio's hub up there in deep space is attracting players to an area is kind of like attracting, I don't know, activity. You're attracting activity. It's what you're after.
Okay,
but that region will live regardless because it's a mission site. There's agents out there. There's like money to be made out there passively. Not passively, but like through mechanics.
Yeah, tell us how you track the orders you have up, Eden? Because that sounds interesting. I see the little note you put to me in the back channel. Thank you.
Yeah, it's I have 4,100 orders up, which is Eve Mogul says it's like 185 billion ISK on the market and market order. So I have I just have kind of, it's not like a complex spreadsheet, but each Eve item has like a type ID, like an ID number associated with the item. So when you export the market data, it only exports the item ID. So I go in my spreadsheet, I copy and paste the item ID, and then it's essentially you just paste it with the stuff that you want to have in stock below the stuff that, and then you just compare, you just look for the duplicate item ID numbers, and it highlights the duplicate numbers, meaning it's in stock. Everything that's not highlighted is out of stock. It's kind of a simple, easy solution.
That is cool. Now, there's nothing in Eve Mogul that tells you if competitors are also putting up buy orders in your system and selling them next to you, right? That's does it see that and assume it's you also, or does it keep it separate?
No, I don't think it does. At least I didn't look for that option. But it'll tell me if something runs out of stock. But a lot of that stuff that I get, like notifications running out of stock, is like market orders falling off. Like I had 200 orders fall off last night that I had to relist.
And how do you feel about other people coming and selling things in your market hub also?
I love it. The more people selling things, the more items that are up there for people to buy, meaning I'm not running out of stock as fast on some things. It helps me keep up, and then they're filling in kind of like the gap.
Is that true for you too, Avio?
I mean, yeah, basically. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Like, yeah, people are coming here buying stuff. I'm seeing sales at least every day. Not like crazy amounts of sale, but at least I sell like 5 things a day. And it's nice to see. I don't know. It's just nice to see that. I'm happy for it. I'm happy that people are coming here. I'm seeing more people sell their own goods here as well. Like, it's effectively becoming that trade up with the region.
Yeah, nice. being able to like actually see a change that you're making in the game is always super fascinating. When it comes to the market stuff, I tried to do a similar thing in FDZ, which is in Geminate. It's very similar to 6NJ in that it's NPC system, and it's kind of an area that people maybe want to go to. And I think I lasted maybe a week before I gave up, because there's just too much work. Like just having to keep tabs on everything, to keep things listed. And then I don't know if you guys happen to come across this, but people realize that they're buying it from the same person. And so they start messaging you in game to say, hey, I need this, I need that. Are you going to get this for me? And I was like, no, I don't want any of this. So you guys make it seem so easy what you're doing, but it's actually quite a big chore.
I mean, sure, yeah, it's work, but like it's fun for me sometimes. Like sometimes I won't do it. Sometimes I'll just be like playing Smash Brothers instead. But the other times I'll get my sleeves and go run some missions, loot the sites, melt it down, maybe get a jump freighter out with some ore, put some orders up, maybe look for something new to put on the market. I'm trying to get rigs on the market right now, and I just stepped out to T2 interceptors for the first time in the game. Like the first time ever I've ever made T2 ships.
Nice. Mazel tov.
Are you starting from the ground floor on those, or are you buying? Yeah, basically,
I invent the blueprints of the BPCs. I jump freighter into supplies. The advanced components, get those in, build them locally.
Nice. Now, is there anything CCP could do to make this gameplay less like work, or more fun, or more effective? I don't scale better.
I don't want to ask CCP for anything really, because I don't even know what to ask for. I mean, I feel like all the tools are at my disposal. I just got to use them in the most efficient way possible. I need to figure out my own strategy.
You're like the rare Eve player these days that isn't asking CCP for thing.
I want more Charistas lore. I'll ask him for that.
Sounds good. Even that.
But even that, I'm making my own lore on the side.
I would like to ask for things first. A Mega Tycoon skill book, so I can have more orders per character instead of having to have 15 characters. And fix the corporate export, because I have to export each character instead of all my corporate characters at once. So please fix that.
I'd like to apologize, Eden Trade, for slagging people who want things from Eve. That's actually a pretty good one because it doesn't make much sense.
Because I mean, you can't. It's too. I think there's less markets because it's just too hard when you're limited to 305 items per character, and you want to put up like a market like I'm doing that has everything. It's just you need a lot of characters.
Well, and that particular change doesn't make a whole lot of sense because people easily get an alt and then put up 500 more orders if they need that. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think they were doing it to try to keep somebody from putting up millions of orders, but
I mean, alts ain't going to stop anybody.
Yeah. I once suggested that you can't really build a trade hub unless you have a bunch of alts to do it, because you have to put up orders for things that aren't going to sell and have to sit there a long time and that don't cost very much. So there's no incentive to actually do that. So why not have ISK cap instead of an order cap? So that you could say, you can only put up about 50 billion worth of items. And that way you could really have a lot of small items.
No. But there are things that cost more than 50 billion.
A single thing. Yeah. Okay. But make it 500 billion. I don't know. But the point is to be able to let somebody with one character and a lot less effort put a lot of different little things on a market hub so that you could really have a variety of objects instead of just the stuff that sells well, because you don't want to bother with other stuff that's going to sit there a long time.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems I ran into when I first started buying stuff. Like, let me buy 5,000 of this T1 item, and they're still down there after it.
Yeah. Anyway, clearly Fozzie, pushed me aside and said, you don't know what you're talking about. And he was probably right. And by the way, talking about things that I don't know what I'm talking about, the person that I couldn't think of a while back was, now I have to scroll back.
Sugar Kyle. You're thinking of Sugar Kyle.
Yes. God, thank you. Sugar Kyle. What would I do without you guys? Sugar Kyle was the person that built up a low-sec trade hub near Stackman. So just want to complete that thought. Thank you.
This show would be a smoking wreck without Elise and McLeod. It would just be a wreck.
Carneros.
No.
All right.
Okay.
Let's go on.
Next question.
What advice would you guys have for an aspiring new market maker? What if someone's listening to this show and says, I could do that. I'd love to do that. I could, I'll set up my own bed and breakfast in the middle of nowhere and I'll set up a trade hub. What advice would you have for them?
Can I start off?
Yeah.
I guess customer service is the biggest thing I can tell you about. I mean, when I was starting out, I was talking to people. I was talking to people who bought my stuff. I was talking to people who didn't buy my stuff, who were just local to the region. I was just communicating. I was just networking and trying to just feel. I work for a grocery chain called Publix, right? It's in the southeast of America mostly, but it has a very strong hard-on for customer service. It loves it when you help customers. And I took everything I learned from that company and applied it here.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm not even bullshitting you. Like a week ago, I had to do a computer-based training where it's how you greet a customer, how you make discoveries, how you recommend, and I forget what the fourth step was, but it's sealing the deal and give them a good farewell and inviting. And I was looking at that training, I was like, yes, I agree with everything this training is telling me. And I was going to apply it to Eve.
Somewhere there's a course writer who helped work on that course, who's listening to this podcast later this week, who is crying because you can't remember the fourth item. But they love that you got the spirit
belonging in his grave. Right?
Well, this plays right into the theme that CCP talks about, where Eve has real skill building opportunities, right? It goes both ways. You leverage what you're good at into the game and what you know into the game for advancement and for advantage. Yep. And then you take what you learn in EVE Online and you bring that into the real world to use.
Yeah, I might be a manager one day. Who knows?
Dream big, man.
Eat and trade. What advice would you have for a new aspiring market maker?
Be ready to spend a lot of ISK and organization. Like, you got to dedicate characters to this group of items if you're going to be hosting like 4,100 items, because when you go to restock, all those characters are always going to be doing those items, only those items. And not buying too many items at once. Like, just start out with 10, 20 items of each item, because I got in like the first thing, like I was like 20 million for 5,000 of this T1 module that's still sitting around for a year. Do not ever do that. You just buy a little bit at a time, and then based off your sales, just keep adding more and more to it. If you're selling out like every 2 days or a week, you just want to add a little bit more to keep it in stock. Probably want to keep stuff at a level to where it's like per month or every 2 months you're running out before it falls off the market and you have to relist it.
So I don't want to sound indelicate, so feel free to not answer if you don't want to. But when you're talking about seeding the market, how much ISK are you talking about when you guys were starting?
I started with my level 5s. I was just making a lot of ISK. I started with 20 to 30 billion, but then I just kept dumping more and more into it, and now eventually I think Stackbond's up to like 120 billion ISK just for that market. And then my other smaller markets I'm starting to create with 900 items or like 15 billion about to start those, but you have to skill inject the characters because I don't want to wait like 3 months, so that's like another 9 billion on top of it.
And Avio, how much did Operation 6NJ end up costing you?
I lost track.
That's right up my alley. Actually, that's how I do my Eve market stuff. Is I just forget once it gets above like 3 billion, I'm like, I don't need to keep track of it anymore.
Again, I'm just pumping money into it blindly. I don't care about making mass amounts of money. I'll make money to keep it alive, but I don't really keep track of profit. As long as I have money, I'm fine. I'm chill.
But I keep track of all my ISK because I need to make a profit to expand into my 12 other markets I want to do. So I'm just like, I got to make a profit to create more market.
You got to grow. We'll get into your future plans.
Wow.
But I wanted to ask this question because speaking of the past, 2019 Trade Hub, you came onto my radar because you were in the top 1% of trading in all of EVE Online last year.
Yes, I was quite amazed by that. I didn't think that would happen.
You're it, man. You're one of the 1%.
Which I think it was 160,000 transactions I did last year. Tritanium being the most. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, actually, Tritanium was the same for me. That's right. I had like 43 million units worth of Tritanium as my biggest seller, or biggest like transaction.
But I think it's just based on individual pieces of Tritanium, so that's why you sell 1 million. That's like 1 million transactions.
Yeah, Tritanium's no joke.
Now, how did you go about picking your next 12 locations that you have in mind?
I haven't picked them yet. I just kind of do that on when I'm ready for it. So I'm going to try to do one each month, meaning 12 months in a year. So that's 12 more. My second one that I made is just the next region over. I wanted Galente space to be built up a little bit with markets. And then, of course, just my trade route with moving ships and seeing like Udema, everybody's going through that squeeze to get to Jita. So there's a lot of traffic. So I'm thinking I'm picking up sales from everybody going to Jita, but then they see it at my trade hub. So they buy it there instead of continuing on to Jita. Also,
sorry.
Also, I base it on the name. Like, you want an easy name to say, like Jita, Stackmon. So you don't want some complex Eve system name in there.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Good idea.
So long, Minotaur Space. You're not getting any of New Eden Trade's
They got
markets.
Ren's. Ren's is good.
Ren's a great name. Ren's is like the Acapulco of trade hubs, right? It used to be cool in the 70s, but now it's kind of
Not
like
anymore. It's all run down and barren, dry, gross, rust.
just cocaine addicts with machetes
Yeah, with the
fighting
machetes,
fighting in the streets.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude. All right.
Hey, I went to Mexico, and that's what they told me happens in Acapulco. So,
And what about
I
you,
don't
Avio? Are you trying to, or are you going to expand 6 and J? Are you going to shove some HPA in there? Or?
I mean, yeah, sure. I'll expand in the sense that I want more free ports open around the region, so there's more places to dock in the region. I want more free ports. I don't want these closed structures. I actually had when I first moved up to 6 and J, there was like 2 structures off the undock of the shipyard station, this NPC station. And I reached out to him at one point. I was like, hey, man, can I just use your facilities? Like, I just sent him a message, tell him what was going on with me, gave him a picture of my blueprints and everything. Eventually, he opened up the structures to me, just me. And as I started posting on Reddit about what I was doing, he came out and was like, all right, these are free ports now. And just made free ports in 6 and J.
Oh, that's awesome.
The corporation was Arcus Core, and the guy I was talking to, his name is Lamp Shadius, which is a pretty good name. He later sold those structures to Boss when they moved in. It was a very nice transaction. I was sort of a middleman for that. Now Boss owns the forts are in orbit of the Garistas capital world.
Boss, the Alliance, right?
Brotherhood of Spacers, yes.
Are they backing you or what?
Yeah, they're backing me. They've been very respectable sponsors for the project, the Venal Prosperity Network. Is what I called it. I haven't really talked about that, have I? The Venal Prosperity Network, which is this loose coalition, I guess, of players that I brought together. Like, there's several like other small corps operating in the area that are helping each other out through this network I've set up, which is just a Discord channel that I put together.
So other marketeers and builders?
People are building stuff. People are moon mining. People are importing goods. Like, things are happening. People are doing stuff.
So you've put them in communication with one another so they could say, I got to trade this. Yeah.
And just make a table people can sit down. No one is obligated to be blue with one another, but at the same time, I don't want people shooting each other. I mean, I want people to work together. I want people to put down tribalism and just make something happen in this region, make something unique happen, original.
Right. If you're not killing the logistics, the traders,
Or the miners.
Or the miners, right. If you're not killing those guys, which are easy targets,
very easy.
You're going to be able to produce a trade hub that will attract, say, mission runners and people who are out there to fight, and you might attract activity, it sounds like.
Yeah, this plays into like my ultimate vision of just somehow trying to have 6 and J be this neutral zone where people just leave each other alone. Like, hey, if they want to fight, if there's just 2 fleets, like, hey, yo, I want to throw down and kill y'all, they can do that. I won't step into that. Like, but if someone just minding their own business, leave them alone. Just let them get that ore. It's just low sec ore. There's no null sec ore in the basic belts. You have to go to an anomaly for that. Just let them build their stuff. Let them put goods on the market. Let this be a central trade hub in this chunk of nullsec. Like, because like, hey, those other regions, they might have their own like industry going on, but they can still use this trade hub. They might have use for it. Maybe one day capital ships will be sold out of that place. Just make it a neutral zone. That's all I ask.
At least this reminds me of something that you're familiar with, which is like if you're not taking all the little fish, the easy kills, the miners and the people who are defenseless, then you may have an opportunity to grab bigger and bigger things later. Like if you can resist that temptation.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're seeing the fields for the future dunks. It's like an investment in owning. So even the most hardcore PvPers, I think, can get behind that idea of, hey, I'm not going to kill the little guy because the little guy is going to eventually become the bigger guy, and then I can kill him.
Yeah, like when the fish is small, you fish it out, you want to throw it back in the river, so it just eats more and like gets bigger because of bigger fish to eat yourself. I don't know.
It was essentially the Pandemic Legion's like alliance kind of mantra for a while is to not overfish areas, because then you have nowhere else to go.
That's interesting, because I've always criticized you guys for overfishing, but I do also know the other side of it is that you guys are smart enough to be aware of that. And you guys have probably dealt with it a lot longer and in more sophisticated ways than I could see from the outside.
Sure, we'll go with that. Well, that's a very nice way to put it. It gives us a lot of liberties that we don't necessarily deserve.
It's hard not to eat the last 2 cookies in the cookie box.
Can I put out one comment in the Twitch chat?
Yeah, of course.
Go for it.
Lillipal was saying high sec is a neutral zone or not. It's not. It's a zone where there's an NPC force with a gun to the back of your head saying, yeah, you can kill that guy, but I'm going to blow your brains out. Where what I want is a zone where people aren't forced by a higher power to act a certain way and just choose to act that way themselves, have self-control, have like discipline. That's what's more that's more engaging to me. It's more dynamic, where it's like the players can hold themselves back, where it's not like some higher power telling them what to do. No authority figure.
Isn't that an interesting thing? We all credit ourselves with the decisions that we make to do a thing, but we don't really credit ourselves for the decisions we make to not do a thing. It takes the same amount of willpower, if not more.
Yeah, exactly. I have more respect for that. Like, when I'm in the fleet, it's like mom mentality with this, but like, I don't want to just go out and kill every player I see. I don't want to do that. I want to talk to them sooner than just shoot them. I want to communicate. I want to like see what's up with them, what they're doing.
Yeah, and this reminds me of when early Eve started, there seemed to be a lot more room for what is called NRDS, not red, don't shoot it, meaning don't kill everybody that you see. If they're not your enemy, let them live. And it created like society where there was no space police from the game. And that was a lot more interesting than just blast everything, because that's all that's fun.
Yeah, because that's why I find like Providence is a very interesting culture. It's like I wish more people in Nullsec did this, where they just open up their ports, or at least just one port, if anything, in their own region. I have respect for Providence for that. I don't really know anybody or dealt with anybody in Providence before, but I can respect what they're doing. I like that they're a free port region.
Now, Avio, you made this Venal Prosperity Network and Discord and set that up, and you tapped into basically the power of diplomacy to help you grow your trade hub. Eden, did you use any diplomacy in setting up your trade hubs?
None at all. I think most people don't even know I exist. I talked to one person and they thought like I was some Imperium alt corp at once when I first moved in, and actually nobody really even knew what was actually going on when I just started my hub.
Nice. Okay.
But I do at times, like I'll hand out free ships and just talk to people, or like if I see a new player that gets ganked or loses his mining barge, I'll contract them another ship and stuff. So I talk to people that way and just say hello in local when I log on and all that.
Okay. Do you like have a spreadsheet and keep track of who all the powers are in your neighborhood and look at the kill boards to see who's doing what, or do you try to track who all the important players are in Placid?
Yeah, I look at the kill boards mostly because I'm interested, because the kills in Placid have been going up and up and up since I've actually started my trade hub.
Nice.
There's more activity. And then like the space hobos, since they're down there now, they're kind of one of like the main powers. I'll talk to them and give them free ships. I think I forget the last ship I gave somebody, one of them a Vexor Navy issue. I just traded it to him. He didn't even say anything. But they're always surprised like that. And I think Roque Capel was down here the other year, and I was talked to several of them and got on good terms. But
I know those guys, they like free ships.
Yeah.
So it's also if someone convos you and says, I saw you on Talking in Stations, will you give them a free ship?
You have to be in Stackmon, maybe.
Just kidding. I'm
Actually,
sorry. Just
speaking of that,
I like the way you're thinking, Carneros.
I gave Avio a billion S just because I liked what he was doing yesterday when I was talking to him on Discord.
I appreciate your
Wow.
contribution.
Oh, he bought shares. Nice.
Wow.
There's no shares in Pirate Space, man.
Yeah, well, the bookkeeping isn't up to snuff, but yeah. Well,
You're killing me. This is hysterical.
go ahead. I'm just going to make a mistake with something. So,
All right, no worries, no worries. All right, we went through all my questions. All right, diplomacy, though, I do think that aspiring market makers might want to remember that and have it in their back pocket too.
Customer service, I call it too.
And customer service, yeah.
so a few more questions here. Did you already go through aspiring advice for other marketeers? Maybe what trouble spots they'll see?
I think we already did that, yes, for like, what advice do you have? And I say customer service, so. And
Okay,
like,
that's
you was saying like start out with like small items, so I think we already went through that.
Yeah. And what are some of did we talk about what some of the bottlenecks are that people will face if they try to follow in your footsteps?
No, I don't think we have.
Well, it's not on the list. I just made it up. So.
Okay, well, fair enough. We haven't done that.
But I wonder, like, if somebody is inspired, right? Like they say, like, hey, this is cool alternative gameplay to the usual. It requires a lot of organization and almost solo time, right? Because a lot of this is done by yourself. I know, Avio, you have a social aspect to it, but you built that.
Yeah, I went into Vino alone. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. And Eden Trade, you work alone?
Yes, I work alone.
And it's meticulous work because you actually do the bookkeeping, so you know where you're at and you can grow, and you're watching this. What are some of the bottlenecks or roadblocks that for instance, right?
Matterall, your connection's lagging a little bit, so I'll help you. Yeah, what are some of the roadblocks and stuff? And also, if your vision grows and you get to 12 market hubs, how are you going to keep up 12 of them and still be one Lone Ranger individual with a lot of alts? Are you going to be able to stock that many stations?
Right now I'm doing actually just fine with my new spreadsheet system. Like, if I could export all my corporate orders at once, I could go through and see what I'm out of stock on and need to restock within probably like 5 minutes. But that's what I'm thinking. I just keep going, and then eventually if I hit that block, there's got to be a way to solve it, which either paying somebody in Game S to make me a better spreadsheet that would automatically tell me when I'm out of stock on, or something using some other service like that in EU.
So when you go to restock some things, obviously it's probably a pretty expensive endeavor, like moving things around, and you're talking about putting up a whole market. Have you ever had your supply runs ganked in any ways?
Absolutely, but it's always been because I got a kill right because I went and stupidly PvP'd, and then that kill rate was activated. I lost like 3 or 4 billion. The other, I almost got ganked this week because I stupidly put in like some level 5 implants that I was going to sell in Jita in my hauler, and I was like, I should use a covert ops hauler, but I'm being lazy, and it was like 2 billion. But luckily they only had 4 ships, and I always preheat my hardeners, so I almost got ganked that way, and then I lost a freighter with like 5 billion in it just because I put more level 5 implants and I was going to Jita with it, being lazy. But never really like full on ganked with moving my market stuff back, because I only keep 1 billion. I limit it to 1 billion in my ship. It's no matter what from now on, unless I'm being lazy like I was this week. But really, you don't want to put more than 1 billion in any hauler is what I go for, because you have to go through Udema to get to where I'm at.
So to break that out a little bit, if you put over 1 billion into a freighter, it becomes a juicier target. At 1 billion, you're basically having gankers, people are going to destroy you outright, break even, because they have to lose that much just to kill you. So it's kind of a wash for them. Why would they waste their time? But once you start getting over 1 billion, they start to look at a profitable kill. So that's what that marker is about. And Udema, I think the system that you talked about is a choke point between Jita and just about half of the map. So a lot of people have to travel through that one system, and that's where a lot of people set up their gate camps and essentially intercept freighters and destroy them, take their loot, take their cargo. Okay, so I want to thank you guys for coming on. There's one last thing I want to hit on, and that's Avio. I don't think we hit on it enough. Maybe we'll have you back to talk about this, but you were a big fan of the Guristas, yeah?
Correct.
And you started out in Dust 514. That's what brought you to
beta, yeah, that's when I learned about E for the first time, back on Dust 514. I was Folly Jones back then, if anyone knows that.
So you were a big player in 514?
I mean, I was a nobody, but yeah, I was pretty big in that game. I still love that game to this day. I don't care if people think it was a trash game. I would play Dust 514 if it was still alive to this day, not gonna lie. That was a very good game.
You're not alone. There's other people like that too. They thought it was a pretty good game. And then you went over and you got really involved in the Rabbit, the Fatal and the Rabbit. Baristas.
Yeah, that started with Eve Valkyrie when I joined that game halfway through its like lifespan. It's still alive technically, but it's like in cold storage. It's not like beating hard anymore. It's alive, but it's not alive. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, I went over there because I learned Fatal was actually like the protagonist in my eyes, but he was in second hand for that game story. I remember buying the comic one time, and I went to go read it on break when I was working at Kroger. And I was reading the second comic. I was like, "Who the hell is this guy?" And he says he's Fatal. I'm like, "Oh shit!"
And what's funny is that,
and then like I know bullshit. Like, I eventually went and bought a console because Fatal was the other announcer for the other team. But that was a selling point. I bought PSVR, PS4, and all that. I mean, I saved up a lot of money. I was just treating myself as well.
Right. So you're doing this so that you could fight on the side of Fatal.
Yes.
The crime boss.
And
your hero.
Reinforced this idea that I was Valkyrie. I was like, nah, I'm Schism, bro. I'm Schism.
Okay, so you're fighting.
I did it by shit posting, writing fiction that was kind of bad, but it served as practice. Eventually, the devs caught on to that. And then when they had the voice actor for Fatal come in for the last expansion, the winter update, they were briefing him on the lore, and the T-Shark, the lore dev for that game, couldn't help but mention my bullshit on the forum. And the VA for Fatal was like, let's do a shout-out video. Let's just do a shout-out video.
So what's that look like?
I showed it to you.
Well, I know, but for the audience.
I mean, it's just a voiceover of Fatal, like saying, hey man, you're legit. That's the abridged version.
All right, how tickled were you that CCP did that for you?
Oh, I screamed.
Yeah,
I had a fanboy moment.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. We'll show that video in the show notes. Well, thanks, Avio. Bringing it back to Eden Trade, what's next for you, or what service do you have?
Oh, I have my market service that I will start up a market for you. It's aimed more at like 0 entities if they want to market, say for their renters, anything like that. Essentially, you just tell me what you want, and I'll come out and just build your whole market for you.
Wow, that's a huge service.
No takers yet because it costs pretty much a little bit more, like a Titan. So I don't think they want to trust some guy, but I will. Hopefully, somebody trusts me one.
So you're saying that if you're a nullsec empire and you don't want to deal with all the logistics, or you don't have the guys that are interested in that in your group, but you need supplies out there, that you'll upstart a trade hub in their area for a fee.
Yep, pretty much. And they get whatever, some of the profits. I get some of the profits, and I'll manage the whole thing.
So you'll profit share with them. Interesting.
Of course.
Very interesting. Two guys that are playing this game in a totally different way than a lot of EVE players. So it's really nice to get to know you guys a little bit. I know Avio has to take off. Eden, stick around if you can. We're going to go through the news next. Let's start out with Elise taking us through some of the new stuff that's fallen into the game recently.
Yeah, I'm going to bounce. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Avio.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. It's a pretty neat way to view EVE Online. You know, everyone sees it in a different. The market people are always super cool. So we had a pretty big, I don't know about big, pretty sizable patch. We're not going to break down all of the patch notes. We'll just highlight some of the cool, probably the most sought after addition to the game for the last, as long as I can remember. Ever since slaves existed in the game, which are now called amulets, people have wanted a shield version of them, and now they exist. They're called Nirvana implants. You can only get them from these low-sec Dragonar sites, and to make it even more complicated, the only ships you can take into these low-sec Dragonar sites are ships that have bonuses to heavy missiles. So it kind of complicates the whole thing. They are wildly popular. People are trying to get them like crazy. Part of the reason is that they're horribly unbalanced, and I'll go into that really. So I just had to grab a little infographic. But okay, so essentially, when you have amulets, which are the implants that increase your armor, high grades increase it by about 55%. There's no passive regeneration for armor. That is not the case for shields. Shields also have a passive or have a passive regeneration amount. So the more shields you have, the more regen you're going to have at its peak. And it's not linear. It's a non-linear function, kind of like capacitor. So you can't just take the amount of shields divided by the recharge rate. What you do is you take the amount of shields divided by the recharge rate, and the peak is about 3.5 times that. So when you're increasing shields by 50%, adding like the peak recharge increases by 175%. So it's a pretty noticeable change. And it ends up making super carriers in general and Titans completely broken. So like people have been theory crafting Komodo fits that are basically unkillable, more or less. I remember like a big part of the hubbub for why shield slaves weren't implemented earlier in the game. CCB had mentioned, oh, it's pretty complicated, because the shield regeneration has to be taken into effect. Because otherwise you can make these horribly unbalanced things. So, it's a time-consuming process. And then they just pushed it out anyways, without touching shield regen at all. They're just like, you guys keep asking for it. You know what? Here, just take it. Just take it. So these things are super popular. They're quite hard to get. Not hard to get. They're quite rare to get. I run probably about 100 of these sites and gotten about 20 implants out of it. Not even, probably closer to 15. And it's random. Sometimes you get a drop that's worth 30,000 ISK. Sometimes you get a drop that's worth a few billion. So,
wow.
Things to keep in mind.
That's what surprised me is I was thinking like, oh, shield slaves are coming out. They must have worked out all the complex details and ways that could go wrong. And it just seems like, nope, they just put them out there.
Yeah.
I was even going to write Rise and say like, what the hell happened, man?
Do you think they're doing that just as fan service, or do you think they're doing that to fix them later, or what do you think they're thinking?
I have a feeling that they're just going to fix it later, or something down in the pipeline. They're going to. I know CCB Fozzie had mentioned before that they wanted to redo a lot of how shield regen works. So maybe in the next quarterly patch, we'll get a whole new regen. These implants are pretty rare, so it's not like you can just go into the LP store and start printing them out, at least not yet. So maybe they're falling back on that crutches. Oh, well, they're rare, so not everyone's going to use them. Unfortunately, EVE Online players are pretty good at abusing them. I've seen some of the most fun things I've seen is from Legacy Coalition and from Test. They've been chaining wormholes in their space to try and get null-sec to low-sec holes. So you could go out in little fleets to run these sites. So you'll see like groups of 6 to 10 like Test Alliance and Brave Newbies and just different legacy people because they have all shields capitals. Just rolling wormholes trying to get into low sec so they could run these sites. It's absolutely hilarious.
So it's like a mad dash to get the ingredients needed to make this stuff that can be put into ships that can make ships ludicrously hard to kill.
Exactly. So one of the interesting things about this Test Alliance in general, they decided when they were kind of rebranding and rebuilding, they decided to ditch armor super caps and titans and go all shield in preparation for shield slaves when they would come out. And I think that was like 4 or 5 years ago. So now they have a shield capital armada, and now finally the shield slaves are out. We should actually stop calling them shield slaves. The Nirvana implants are out. So it's a mad dash for them to try and get that.
Yeah. What do you think are going to be the long-term winners from this change?
Leviathan owners, maybe? I don't know.
Let's say they figure out a way to nerf that, because they've got to, right?
I would hope so. I have a feeling that just passive shield fates are going to be a little bit more playable instead of just active shielding. Right now, if you want to PvP in a small to medium sized gang, you mostly just active shield, and that really limits what you can do because you're so cap dependent. And it just doesn't scale very. But maybe if you could take, if you get ships that have a little bit more just raw shield, you can just PvP with those, and that scales much, much better.
So ships with a lot of mid slots, or actually low slots. I used to run a shield fit Myrmidon. It was just a passive regen. And it was a slow boat. You couldn't move very fast. So for missions, it was kind of a pain, but nothing was going to take that out.
Yeah, but I think more along the lines of something like a rogue. Instead of it being active shield tanked, it might be passive shield tanked right now. So you just have, and by passive, I just mean buffer tanked. Mm-hmm. So with these Nirvana implants and some large shield extenders and some resist, the rogue, instead of just being an active tanking beast like it is now, I'm talking about for a small gang and stuff like that. Maybe you'll see more just all passive fits. So that's something that the shield meta has been lacking quite substantially. Mostly ships like the Drake, which is probably something that people will remember very, very fondly. It was basically one of the only passive shield tanking ships that you could fly because it just had so many raw shields.
Right, had so many slots for it, right?
Yeah.
So a ship with a lot of mid slots are going to benefit from these changes.
Yeah, non-active tanking shield ships are going to be a big winner. But that's not all that happened. As I mentioned, these Dragonor sites, they only allow ships inside that have bonuses to heavy missiles. The reason for that is because to go alongside with this change, the patch also introduced a slight buff to heavy missile damage and just heavy missile application in general. Heavy missiles have been kind of in the corner and over nerfed for years. So CCP have finally started to lift them up a little bit. So 5% bonus to damage, not much. There's a new bonus to application. So the explosion velocity for all heavy missiles has been improved, which means it can hit smaller targets, which is a really good thing for them. So just overall damage has gone up on heavy missiles. I wouldn't say significantly, but enough to notice a difference.
Do you think there's a chance they'll do something for XL torpedoes and XL crews?
One can only hope. That would be a fun thing.
So looking at these missiles and some of the reasons that they've been popular in the past, the Drake is a battle cruiser from Caldari that is very cheap to build. It's a T1 and it has a lot of slots you can put on it. So you could use at a certain point, you could buff its shields really high. So it just took a long time to chew through that ship. And if you had enough of them together, they could just shoot their missiles. And missiles, one of the things are they just always attack. They always hit. They may not apply damage because you're too small to feel all that explosive damage. But for bigger ships, it's a full impact. And so when you have enough missiles coming at something, it essentially volley something off the field.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where your positioning doesn't quite matter, right? Because if you're firing a turret, it matters where, how your ship is going and how the target ship is going. So if you're going too fast on your ship, no matter the what the other ship is doing. You might just out-track yourself. With missiles, it's a little bit easier because there's no tracking. So the missiles, as you mentioned, will just hit. So you could be going 2K a second and fire a missile, or you can be standing still and fire a missile, and the only thing that matters is the target.
Right. And that's a really good point. There's advantages, some weaponry like lasers and railguns. Those things apply damage instantly, but a missile takes time to travel there. So you're not applying all that damage all at once as soon as you fire. So there's trade-offs to all this weaponry. And missiles were one of the things where I think they probably nerfed them at a time when people were just climbing into hundreds and hundreds of missile ships and shooting missiles all at once and then just annihilating everything off the field.
Yeah, I've got some theories about why that happened, but it'll be way too long to go into. But we can keep moving on. We also see Tierside again. Tierside's back after a brief hiatus, or not so brief hiatus. So there's module Tierside on shield boosters, which maybe does lead into the thought that maybe there'll be module Tierside for shield rechargers and stuff like that coming in the future. Let's see what else.
Tierside, for those of you who are newer or haven't paid attention, is when they take a category of module for your ship and they look at all the different variations they have, some of which don't really always make sense, and they reorganize them to have a set of coherent names and specialties each, so that there's a reason for each of them and a trade-off for each of them. Anyway, so it's much easier for a new player to come in and make sense of the category, and then, easier for you to find what you're looking for.
And there's also a few quality of life changes that happened. You guys can read all about it in the patch notes. One thing that we should mention is that no longer have mic warp drives. They have afterburners, but I believe stand-up sirens don't. I'm not sure. Carnaris, you might have a little bit more insight into this.
Yeah, nothing changed about stand-up sirens. I'm checking right now.
Stand-up or station, those are the ones launched from the station. Not from a ship, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I'm quickly getting into a Keepstar right now just to look.
So sirens, if you guys aren't familiar, are they're fighters that provide support in that they can disrupt you. They can keep you from warping. So it's a really good way for a stranded super capital to kill its target without having to worry about pretty much anything. And the stand-up siren is just a similar thing, but it's launched out of the system. So that might be an oversight, maybe not. Who knows? It's important to know. One of the big things that come out, which is something that the community has been asking about for quite some time now, is CCP has relaunched the Plex for Good campaign, which allows you, the player, to donate Plex. You can either buy the Plex, you can buy it with the real ISK or real money. You could buy it from the market. You can get rid of some of your stockpiles. And you contract it to the Plex for Good character, which I will look up before I say, because I don't want to mess up. And
while you're looking that up, I will mention that I launched my fighters, and they do have sirens now have afterburners for the stand-up version also.
Oh, okay, okay.
I didn't see that in the note.
So both versions of the siren have that. That's good to know. Yeah. So the Plex for Good campaign is something that's super great. As we mentioned, you can donate Plex to a CCP character. CCP will then take the Plex donated, convert it to real currency, and then donate that money to the, I believe it's the Icelandic Red Cross, who will be donating it for the Australian bushfires that have been ravaging Australia. And we've seen quite a few player groups come up with little in-game events going around the Plex for Good campaign. I think we saw Darkshines lose the first Zenitra yesterday for a fundraiser type thing for Plex for Good. The Eve Down Under people had a brawl in Alvula on, I believe, Friday, just around Australian Prime. So quite a few little events have been happening, which is always great to see the community do. one player even, and I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but one player who has been an on and off veteran of EVE Online since the beginning made a post on Reddit. I was like, hey, I've been kind of coming in and out of this game for so long, but I decided I'll finally quit. And to, keep me true, instead of keeping all of my ISK on my account for a rainy day, I've liquidated everything, bought Plex, and donated it to Plexurga, which I think it was something like 100,000 Plex, which is just a massive amount.
Yeah, and I think his whole presentation was like, I'm checking out and I'm going out in style. I'm going to give all my money, my fictional EVE money, to this cause, which creates a real world benefit, real world money for people. And that's how I'm going out in style. Peace out. And I'm thinking, maybe CCP doesn't want these kinds of I'm leaving the game messages to be tied to this charity fundraising they're doing, because if this happens too often, if people start doing this, it would seem like a disincentive to actually do the charities in the first place. I don't know. I'm overthinking it.
Probably a little bit. I think it's still a cool thing. So props to him for going out and.
Yeah, because it was equivalent to what, $3,000 or something like that.
A little bit more, but yeah, somewhere around there. And as we mentioned before, Initiative had their own little thing. Dark Shines lost had an event where they lost the first Sinitra.
Yeah.
So there's something like. There were thousands of people on that kill mail because it's a cool little thing to do for raising, but also it's the first Zenitra to ever die.
Well,
yeah, that's the new Triglavian Dreadnought, and people were really cool about, okay, take a shot at it, but don't kill it right now. Let's focus. There's so many other things to shoot at the time. I had a great time.
Well, that sounds like it's bait, though. Let's use the Zenitra as bait to attract people. Then we'll kill them all, and then we'll kill the Zenitra.
It's a win-win.
Everybody wins.
If you die to a Zenitra, you're not managing your range. You're not tackled there. Just move out of its range.
No, but wasn't there a defense fleet for it?
There was a fleet there. Whether you would call it a defense fleet, there were so many fleets there. There were people in all kinds of things. There's no reason why you didn't have something interesting to shoot. And if your fleet had any mobility, you could get in close, shoot the Zenitra once or twice, and then go somewhere else on grid and shoot other things. You could pick Tengus, or you could pick Drakes. They had all kinds of things to shoot. I saw people I think they were in Navy APOCs. Those are fun to shoot.
Yeah, I guess I could find something to criticize and everything. They're raising money for charity. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. But I want to go back to the Sirens for just a second, because I think the Siren nerf, if you look at it, is supposed to be a nerf that kind of curtails the power of the Super Umbrella, doesn't it? Reducing its range or speed, reducing therefore its ability to project damage by what, 50%?
You mean the Sirens change?
Yeah.
For me, this pairs with another change, which was recently they told us we had to move our flexible upwell structures, our Ansiblex and our Sino beacons. They had to move them from 500K away to 1,000 away. And this means that we can't launch our Sirens and go out and tackle anything that came to our Ansiblex, because basically they have to be AFK for you to burn your afterburning Sirens all the way out there. It might say to you that with the afterburner on, it can go X speed, but it takes you half a cycle to even get up to that speed. So it's very slow. It basically means Sirens are useless to tackle anything that's doing that. And we, in my space, annoying attacks on these flex structures is a daily thing. Though they come out every day, shoot something and go. They don't necessarily form to come back for the timer, But if we don't get up and do something, they come every day, because you can't, that's what they're for. The CCP changed it so that these things could be an opportunity for asymmetrical fighting.
And the big thing, where if you were in a small gang and you had found a target of opportunity in a super or something that was out of position, the sirens would come in, tackle you, even if you were kiting at like 30 or 40 kilometers, and you try to kill them, and they could just recall them very, very quickly. And so you didn't really have a chance to kill them. Now with the afterburner change, the sirens just die horribly and very quickly, unless you're like right on top of the ship you're shooting. So it gives kind of defangs, makes defanging super caps and things that rely on sirens a lot more plausible and a lot more reliable. So it kind of just removes another arsenal that caps had against subcap. Just we've had series of nerfs and nerfs and nerfs to capitals, applying damage, like effective damage, to subcapital ship. And I have a feeling that's not going to stop.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Like, what signal is CCP sending? Are these just more and more ways of curtailing the gameplay that they were trying to go after last summer during Blackout? The intense amount of ratting and mining that goes on in nullsec. Is this a slow chipping away at some of the things that make that such a powerful and lucrative thing to do?
I think it's just they're trying to add more risk into the risk reverse reward
Right.
So you're gonna, if you want to have capital ships out and about and super caps, you're gonna have to have subcap contingent with them. They can't just be effective on their own. Which, I mean, they're still effective on their own now, but as you get chipped and chipped away more, maybe that dynamic is going to start shifting.
Yeah, there's a tipping point. It seems like either you're going to risk your expensive ship more, or you're going to put it away. Either way is a win situation, because you get less of that kind of force projection that scares people away from attempting to fight. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what they're doing here. Again, the game has slipped into an area that isn't very interesting to me at all, where we're just balancing mechanics, trying to figure out what will work, what will make people risk stuff, what won't, how people behave to perceived risk. And I don't know. I think if we're in an era where we're going back to balancing EVE Online just to make the players fight, I think this is a bad place to be. I mean,
one thing that we kind of glossed over a little bit that is kind of important about this patch, which I believe is called Fight or Flight.
Yeah,
is that in the post, CCP mentioned and I guess solidified their their patch schedule for the whole year. And it's, instead of whatever they've done in the past, they're going to a system of quadrants. So there are going to be 4 quadrants, obviously, this year, where they'll have kind of, I don't want to say big patches, but like medium patches of content. So this was our first quadrant. So in Q2 is we're going to get another one, probably around, from guessing, probably around when FanFest is around, is where we're going to get quadrant number 2 out.
4. Oh.
We're having a little bit of sound difficulty again. Sorry about that. So Plex for Good, that was a lot of fun. Great this weekend to make some money for the bushfires in Australia. And thank you to Darkshines for the first Zernitra kill. Actually, while Matterall is trying to fix his microphone, I'd like to also mention a couple of upcoming announcements. I'm cheating. I'm jumping ahead for a moment, though. Coming up later this week on Talking in Stations, Red versus Blue takes on faction warfare. Maybe you know them from High-Sec Permanent War of the Red versus the Blue faction. Great on-tap PvP for those people who want to enjoy small skirmishing. Well, here now they're going to try their hand at faction warfare.
Well, actually,
more. Oh, go ahead.
They're already out. They went in a couple weeks ago and they're out, and only one part of them, the Red group, went into Caldari Militia, and they're out. We'll talk to them actually Wednesday.
That's going to be this Wednesday at 23:59 UTC, so basically midnight UTC. And then we'll hear some more. Also, there's another show coming the next night, a little bit later, so 26 hours later at there's a show for Talking in Stations for called Echo Station, about Eve Echoes, the new mobile game that just finished its open beta. So that's meeting at 2 p.m. Friday Eve time, 2 a.m. Friday Eve time, 0200 Eve time, which for Pacific time zone folks is 6 p.m. So U.S. time zone show. Come hear more about Eve Echoes. Sorry, go ahead, Madral.
Oh, no, I was just, no, you please finish.
Yeah, so Wednesday night and Thursday night, from a U.S. perspective, we got a couple good shows coming, and then we'll be back next Sunday. Also, special thanks again to our guests for this episode, Avio Yanken from Star Frontiers out in Venal, and Eden Trade from the New Eden Trade and Market, who is doing stuff in Stackmon and Uedama and various places in between.
Yeah, thanks, Carneros, for wrapping us through the announcements there. We'll go ahead and wrap up this show and jump into public right after this show if you want to join us. We want to thank, of course, our guests, which we just did, and January Valentine, the producer, McLeod, the streaming engineer, and thank, obviously, Carneros and Elise for helping us out with this episode. For those that don't know, we are having some podcast issues this week. We will fix those. Connection was broken, so the podcasts haven't updated in a few episodes. The episodes are still being produced, edited, and published on talkinginstations.com. We'll try to get that repaired as quickly as possible, probably in a few days. It takes a while because it just does. That's the way the podcast world is. It takes a while to see if what you do works. And so that's why it's taken some time. Elise, do you have anything else?
No, I just say people should go try out these Dragon Plexes. You be kind of careful when you go and do it. Actually, you might want to just look at the kill board for the Dragon Hearts guys, so you can watch how people are dying. It's probably my vice. I just F5 the kill board to see how people are dying to NPCs, and I have a laugh at their expense. Don't worry, I've died. As long as you've died once to them, you can laugh at other people who have died once. So,
Carneros, last words. Walk the plank, last words.
Fly classy.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We will see you guys Wednesday, and then again next Sunday, where next Sunday we'll probably talk to some people about scamming and what goes on there. But that's it for now. I want to appreciate the crowd for coming through, and if you want to help support Talking in Stations, look for us on patreon.com/Matterall. You can support us there. I really appreciate all that. Okay, thanks everyone. We will see you next time on Talking in Stations.